All right, Bob Gardner here from thebraidedwarrior.com. Welcome to another Warrior Wednesday. Today we're going to take a kind of a heavy topic. We're going to talk about the need for you and me to answer the difficult questions that your kids are going to bring up. Sometime in your relationship with your kid, as you're raising them from teeny tiny all the way up to full grown, you're going to have them come up to you and ask you questions about things like pornography, things like sex, things like relationships and dating, things like all the accoutrements that are related to those things. Like they'll ask you all kinds of questions. And how you and I answer those questions will dramatically affect the relationship that you can have with them and that I can have with my kids as they move forward. Okay, when I was in 5th grade, I was sitting at the table in my elementary school in Spangdahlem, Germany. And my friend, his older brother, who was in 6th grade, it was his birthday. And somebody asked him what he wanted for his birthday. And he replied, in 6th grade, he wanted a year's supply of condoms. Okay? This was back in like 1990, 1991. And I didn't know what it was, but his brother laughed and everybody else laughed. I still remember their names and I can envision the lunchroom very vividly. And so I giggled because that's what I was supposed to do, even though I didn't know. And then later that day, my family, we were at the department store and we were in like the fishing or the tackle box or the hardware section. And my dad was perusing around and I looked up and I looked at my dad and I said, "Hey Dad, what's a condom?" Now, he was totally unprepared for this. Totally unprepared. This was out of the blue. There was no like me pussyfooting around to try and get to the conversation topic at all. We were just in the middle of the store and I asked him the question because I didn't know it was a bad thing. It seemed like something was funny. And so his answer and his response to me was something that came out of his own hesitations and discomfort from the situation, not mine. So I asked the question and all the dads in the department store are looking around like, what's he going to say? I need to know so I can take notes just in case my son asks me this question in the middle of the department store. Well, my dad is a fighter pilot. And part of what they use condoms for with fighter pilots is they use it as like a water bladder, just in case of emergencies, because it holds a bunch of water. And so he just looked at me and he said, it's an emergency water bag. Now, I don't know what was in his mind. I don't know if he was planning to address it with me later or anything of that sort. All I knew was I was like, oh, that's weird. Why would somebody want a year's supply of emergency water bags in the 6th grade? So I was like, okay, funny joke, whatever. And it wasn't until some time later, a couple years later, that I found out what a condom really was. And that was from a TV show back in the day called Doogie Howser, who was this 14-year-old super genius medical doctor or whatever. And once I found out what it was, then I was sort of distraught. The bombshell had hit and I realized that my dad had, in an effort to hide himself from the discomfort of the situation, given me a blow-off answer. Now, I'm not saying this story to throw my dad under the bus. I know he did the best job he could, and there are many people on this planet that would crave a father like my father. He is a rock star. He is amazing, and I have learned so much from him in my life that has made me who I am today, including this. If I hadn't had this experience, I wouldn't be talking to you about this right now. I learned from that experience that when it came to sex, when it came to pornography, when it came to things like that, I was going to have to find the answers out on my own. And so I never went to him with questions. Now, do you want your kid to grow up thinking that they can't come to you with the questions that matter to them? I bet not. And so my invitation to you today is to start to consider now, whether your kid is 6 or 7 or 4, how are you going to answer these questions? And I know it's uncomfortable. And it's easy to say, hey, that's kind of an uncomfortable question for me right now, but it's an important one, son. And I want to give you the best answer that will help answer all your questions, because it's kind of a big question. So can we talk about this at home? And I'll set aside some time tonight to do that. Something along those lines. So that your children know, hey, you know what? He's not going to shy away from the tough stuff. He's going to answer it straight up. And maybe you think that the kids are too young for some of this stuff, but they're encountering it at school. Their friends bring it to school. They see it on the internet and everything else. Are you prepared? Are you prepared to have the conversation? Are you prepared to answer the difficult questions? And that's not just about pornography and sex. What about death when they have to deal with that? If you can show your kids your vulnerable side, that you're just dealing with stuff too. If you can answer the questions that they bring up to you with truth, with the reality, like, well, this is really kind of an awkward question for me, but it's important. I can see it's important to you. If you can answer all of those things, then your kids will see you as someone who cares, who might not have the answers, but is willing to go find them with you, or is willing to do their best, is always on their side, ready to help. And I want that for you, and I want that for my kids to experience. So my invitation to you today is to start to consider what your answer is going to be. I've already had this talk with 2 8-year-old sons. Like, as my sons get up to about 8 years old, I've already had the talk with them. I initiated it so that we don't have any of these awkward moments. But when those awkward moments come up, and they have, I answer it point blank as best I can. And sometimes my wife grimaces, but I do my best. And my kids know that I'll answer their questions. All right, so for Warrior Wednesday today, get up the courage to answer the difficult questions. And then go sign up on my website for more discussions about things like this relating to parenting, to fatherhood, and anything that can make you have a relationship with your kids and your wife that is powerful, so you can have a family on fire just like I want for mine.